Welcome to a very special episode of the Empirically Explained podcast on the Empirically Podcast Network. I'm your host, Andre Abrahamians. I used to work at the San Francisco Chronicle for Hearst Media, and I'll be your host and guide every week as we interview guests that can help us digest the often complicated cosmopolitan of ideas, culture, and politics in the U.S. And we're going to be doing it through an empirical lens, using data to tell stories. This week, we're talking about automation with our guest, presidential candidate Andrew Yang. He's a candidate running on the platform of universal basic income. Andrew will tell us about why he's concerned about the rise of the machines and why we should be worried about the next technological revolution. Some quick background on our very smart guest. He did some economic advising to former President Barack Obama, and he's also the author of the book, The War on Normal People, The Truth About America's Disappearing Jobs and Why Universal Basic Income is Our Future. Andrew's worked in nearly every industry, from healthcare to technology to entrepreneurship. As part of his nonprofit and fellowship program for entrepreneurs called Venture for America, Andrew has traveled to cities like Detroit, Cleveland, Birmingham, Baltimore, St. Louis, cities that have been hit hard by manufacturing being moved offshore and facing rising unemployment in their major metro areas. He's out there with the mission of jump-starting the economy and creating new jobs. Talk about someone who actually might be qualified to be running for president. Andrew Yang also might be potentially the first Asian American presidential candidate scared of automation, and why he might be right. We'll take a look at that and what it could mean for the U.S. economy, the U.S. workforce, later on in our show. You can learn more about Andrew Yang and all of his internet-breaking policies at yang2020.com. Without further ado, let's jump into our interview with Andrew Yang. All right, thanks for joining us, Andrew.
It's my pleasure. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm here with my co-host,
Anuj.
And I'm Andre. We're the hosts of the Empirically podcast, and with us today, we are with presidential candidate Andrew Yang. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's great to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Great. So we want to definitely start with a few questions that we have about your UBI platform. Anuj, you want to take
Sure. Yeah. So one piece of the whole UBI platform that I found really interesting was this idea of a digital social currency that you want to implement in parallel with the current economy.
Yes. Yeah. It's vital.
One thing that I find really interesting about calling it a parallel economy is you say that initially it would be set up and funded by the government. So it kind of feels like there would be a very natural intersection between these two. And I kind of want to better understand why you think differentiating the social currency from standard
dollars.
Currency, sure.
Yeah.
Why that would be a valuable thing.
Well, we're working on building the digital social currency independent of government, actually. I mean, like when I wrote the book, and I think it's most effective if I become president and then we can work with the government because it would spur adoption more quickly in some sectors. But here's the state of affairs. So we have GDP, it's going up, and we're like, oh, it's great. But then you look and realize that GDP does not actually include many Americans increasingly, that you can get rid of 3.5 million American truck drivers, and that'll actually be good for GDP because we're like, oh, look, we just are about to save billions and billions and increase efficiency. Mm-hmm. And so we need to create a new set of measurements that actually correspond to human well-being. Mm-hmm. Things like median income or mental health and freedom from substance abuse, childhood success rates, environmental equality, proportion of elderly in quality situations, and on and on. So the first issue is that we have this archaic way of measuring economic progress, GDP, that we made up during the Great Depression less than 100 years ago, and it's going to lead us to doom because we're going to be like, oh, it's great. We're going to be cheerleading it even as our economy and our society goes off a cliff. So then you look and say, okay, here are these other things we value. The question is, how do we get people to behave in ways that increase those outputs? So let's call it childhood success. Let's say you had people who are investing in helping children succeed. And right now, the market has a very, very fuzzy evaluation of that value. It's like, well, pay teachers a certain amount, too little in my opinion. You pay sitters, pay nannies, things like that. So you have 3 ways you could approach the fact that there's all of these missing activities that you want more of. And you have to look too and see that all these activities are actually plummeting right now by the numbers, where Americans spend less time socializing, where our social capital is dropping. And so you could do nothing, which is our current plan, which will just continue having things get worse. You could start paying people money, which is what you're suggesting. But then I would suggest that paying people money to nurture children or take care of the elderly actually has some real perverse effects over time and would also be very costly. Then the third thing you can do is you create a new currency and say, hey, we're going to pay you in this. But this is guaranteed in dollars, so you're going to react to it as if it has real value. But there are many advantages to the new currency. One is that it can be social in a way that money is not. Like if I'm making a certain amount of money, culturally I'm not supposed to tell you about it. but if I make these social credits for all these positive things I'm doing, I can share it with you, and that would be like A-okay. It might be laudable. The other thing is that if you have all of these currencies built up, you only need a certain reserve to redeem it at any given point in time. Like I have 200,000 Amex points right now. How much does that cost Amex? Nothing right now, because I have this balance that makes me feel good.
That's right.
But if you had to pay me in dollars,
that's another story.
Then I would have gotten all that money, and then the impact of Amex is much higher immediately. So there are these benefits to having a new currency that are really significant over trying to pay people in money. But the challenge, though, is that we're going to have many, many Americans who don't have market-based opportunities. Again, you have these 3.5 million truck drivers, their economic value goes to zero. So we need to create a different form of economy very fast.
But with things like taking care of children or taking care of the elderly, there's already jobs for that, right? There's already people that are getting paid money.
Oh, are there? So my wife is raising our 2 children, and the market values her work at zero. So you could be like, oh, it's a job. It's true too. The average home healthcare worker taking care of the elderly is getting paid $22,000 a year, and the turnover is 100% a year. So, like if we think if we think the market's going to figure out how best to optimize for these things, it's going to disappoint us unless we change things significantly.
I guess my question is, how do we get people to actually buy into the value of this social currency, right?
Well, again, if the government were to say, hey, one social credit equals $1 and you can trade it in at any bank, then you'd be like, well, I guess it's really $1. Maybe you do it once just to test it out. Like you'd get 100 social credits, you'd go turn it into $100 and be like, yeah, I guess that works.
It's almost like the gig economy in a different way that's not paying you by the dollar. Like Uber, you drive around, you pick up someone's groceries, you drop it off, you get 10 social credits.
Yeah, you're right, Andre. It's spot on. More 94% of the jobs created between 2005 and 2015 were gig economy jobs, temp jobs, contractor jobs.
It's a lot of jobs.
So one of the problems we're facing right now is that we have this screwed up health insurance system that's based upon people having full-time jobs and benefits. And then there aren't new jobs that will give them those benefits. So one of the things we need to do is nationalize healthcare. We need to move towards a Medicare for all single-payer approach. But that is the right approach, Andre, where you say, hey, there are these people, and then you can help your neighbor, you can volunteer, you can tutor a kid, and all of those things. Essentially, you end up building this parallel gig economy around things that are really wholesome and help move society forward.
We're going to take a quick break to talk about our sponsor, InHood, your digital bulletin board. If you're a business, restaurant, school, or even a gym, you know there's not a perfect place where you can go and keep in touch with the latest news and notes from your community. You're always waiting for another newsletter, email, or group text blowing up your phone or your Facebook. Until now, with InHood, you can access a sleek online bulletin board, post updates to your group, pin comments, start discussions, and even set up polls. We use InHood to organize our meetings and deadlines, discuss threads about upcoming guests, and talk about what articles we want to write about. We love InHood, and we think your community will too. Try InHood today, the perfect way to stay connected to your community. Go to inhood.us/empirically. Start today and get your first 100 posts absolutely free.
Kind of shifting the conversation a little bit back to the Second Amendment. That conversation that I referenced, my friend on the plane, teacher, she has a friend who's a registered member of the NRA, and she said after the last school shooting, honestly, there's so many, it's kind of piling up now. And I think
we don't even know which one we're referring to anymore.
Exactly. And she was saying, I would love to bring my gun to school because I could protect these kids. And, I would love that opportunity. And I didn't even get to respond. She kind of just jumped in and was like, let's say an active shooter does come to our school and they somehow manage to get to her class and she manages to kill that shooter. Do the kids look at their teacher as a hero or as a murderer who teaches geometry? I mean, it's asking so many questions.
Yeah, no, just the fact that we're having those conversations lets you know just how far things have gone. To me, it makes absolutely no sense to arm teachers because the odds of some kid getting accidentally shot, in my opinion, are much, much higher than that teacher disables an active shooter. It's like if you put guns in every classroom, the odds of some kid shooting themselves over time, nearly 100%. It's plus, it's not for teachers to somehow be trained as, counterterrorism or something. I mean, the whole thing is insane, and it just goes to show how demented we are on this particular set of issues. So you have to think about what's optimal, or what's even not optimal, but going on in other societies. In other societies, teachers are not having conversations about how to defend classrooms against armed shooters. It's
not on the agenda.
Yeah, it's not even there. The NRA. So one of my plans as president is to get firearm manufacturers to internalize the cost of mass shootings. So what I mean by this is to say, look, if your firearm gets used in a mass shooting, we're going to fine you $10 million per civilian death, and then see whether gun manufacturers all of a sudden are a little bit you know what, maybe we should start investing in signature guns so that people can't use guns that aren't registered to them. There are things that you can do. The problem right now is that the money flows towards really, unfortunate things where, this is crazy, but gun sales go up whenever there's a gun shooting, whenever there's a school shooting, because gun owners are afraid that legislation's coming. So, so perversely enough, school shootings are probably good for the firearm industry. So you need to change that if you can. So that's one of the things I'm hoping to enact as president.
Today's episode of the Empirically Explained podcast on the Empirically Media Network is brought to you by the Blockchain University, our presenting sponsor, the world's leading blockchain developer community. Are you a developer interested in a career in the blockchain? For engineers, we offer a host of developmental courses in Ethereum, Hyperledger, and Corda. For executives and non-technical managers, we have a set of courses to help you understand the best strategies for integrating blockchain into your company. Work with brilliant instructors from Google, Facebook, and Visa to find how your skills can fit into building the future of the blockchain industry. Go to www.theblockchainu.com to learn more and sign up today. Join the world's leading blockchain developer community.
Yeah, and that's the big overriding theme of this campaign is that right now in American life, we just think the market's going to do it. The market's going to figure it out. Market's perfect. And the market is going to have more and more perverse effects. Where it's the market is going to be hey, I can get trucks to drive themselves. That's great. And it's hey, what do you do with these 3.5 million former truck drivers? Market does not care. The market, the market's not ooh, unemployed cashiers. That's a problem. But that there becomes a human problem. And so we need to stop thinking the market can figure it all out, because it cannot. And then come and say, look, like, we need to have our own judgment as to what's important, like, you know, how fast is too fast in terms of like the market's progress and the rest of it. But the market, the logic of the capital markets has overrun every waking moment of our lives up to this point. Like now, it's more extreme than anyone could ever have imagined.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's right on the money. The market correction is just right around the corner.
Yeah, and when there's a new recession, oh my gosh, because then all the automation knives are going to come out, because companies do not lay people off when there's an expansion, but when there's a recession, they lay people off, and this time they're going to go crazy because they're already looking around saying, I could get this work done with a lot fewer people and a little more technology.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of that rule of that thought that CEOs are concerned about themselves and their shareholders and nobody else.
Well,
the consumer is secondary.
Well, and that's their job, and that's the problem too, is that we've defined their job so narrowly. But you can't blame them; you have to blame the system. It's what Tim O'Reilly calls the master market intelligence. That if you pay a CEO to maximize the stock price, guess what? He's going to maximize his stock.
Yeah, the dude does his job.
Yeah. So if we start paying CEOs to maximize human well-being along like 8 different measurements, they'll probably do that too.
We're going to take a quick break to talk about a very exciting giveaway we are doing with our sponsor, Ticket Harbor. Ticket Harbor is the largest fan-exclusive ticket website, and with their expertise, we are offering a listener the chance to win 2 free tickets to an upcoming music festival. The tickets could be for Outside Lands, it could be for EDC, maybe even Coachella. We are waiting for the lineups to decide. Subscribe to our Facebook page and to our podcast for hints on how to win.
It's a good place to kind of end. Andrew, thank you so much for coming and speaking with both of us.
Yeah, thank you.
This afternoon. It was really great to have you and to really have your perspectives on where you see America.
No problem, guys. We need you. We need the young folks who care about this country to step up. Because again, and I'll say too that our government, our society has really stuck it to young people in an incredibly unfair way. We've like saddled you with ridiculous debts and then said it's your fault that you can't find good jobs when we've essentially like kicked out the ladder that one would have climbed in other points. If I were you, I'd be pissed off. I'm pissed off on your behalf, and I'm going to do everything I can to fix it. But you should know that some of us see it very, very clearly just how badly we have shafted your generation.
Well, we're here trying to figure out how we can help.
Yes, let's fix it together.
Yeah,
I need your help. I need your help. Your help. Your help. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you for listening, and thank you for being here, Andrew.
No problem. My pleasure, guys.